Hello and Assalamualaikum and welcome to another video with Roop's Brain Dojo. So we've already talked about installing Python on our Windows machines and also a bit about the Python shell, saving files and running files. So today we're going to talk a little about variables and the different data types. So if we start with variables, a variable is simply put the name that you give to any value. It may be a number, it may be a word, it may be a sentence. So the name that you give to any of those things is called a variable. And variable assignment is generally very easy in Python. I'm also going to show you how it varies from the other languages, or let's say the older languages. The other term I used is data types. So again, there are a number of data types that we can work with. There are simple numbers, which can further be divided into integers that are whole numbers, float, which means decimal numbers, and complex numbers. Then there are words or sentences that we call strings. Then there are also lists and tuples and dictionaries and sets and a number of things. Today, we're just going to be talking about strings and numbers essentially. So, let's just start directly by declaring a few variables. So, we're going to do this directly in the shell. I'm not going to create a separate file for this. So, let's just say we want to declare a variable a and we want to give it the value 20, b, and we want to give it the value 5. Let's just say C and we give it the value 1.5. So it's a decimal value or a float. Now if you want to see if these have actually been saved in the variable, let's just say print A and it gives you the value. Okay. So now if you want to run any operations on these values, you don't have to write the values themselves. You can just use the variable names. Let's say print A plus B or print A multiplied by C, let's say. Okay. Now, yes, it's 30.0, so it did not have to write the 0 here, but because C was a float or a decimal number, it's always going to give you the final output also as a float or as a decimal number. Let's try another one. So let's say print A plus B plus C, and again it's given you the answer as a float or as a decimal number. Now similarly, we can save strings in a variable as well. So let's say I want to give the variable this name, my name, and I write so this is a string and we always put the string in inverted commas. Okay, so now this is going to be saved as my underscore name. Let's say I write another one, channel underscore name equals okay. So now every time you want to write this text, you can simply use this variable name instead of having to type the whole text. So let's just say we use it in a print command. So print, and we want to print the statement my name is and then use the variable name. So this is how we're going to do it. So you write in inverted commas my name is because we want this statement to go as it is. Then put a comma and then write the variable name where you saved the name. This works well where you have a list of names that you want to print out and you don't need to repeat the statement every time. So let's just say my name is, comma, my name, and print it. So it displays it as my name is Roop Umar. Let's combine two variable names in the same print statement. So let's just say again, my name is, comma, sorry about that, my name, then comma again, and I welcome you to, comma, channel underscore name. Let's try and print this. So here you've combined two strings and two variable names in the same print statement. So the output it's given you is, my name is Roop Umar and I welcome you to Roop's Brain Dojo. So these are some very, very basic operations that you can run using variable names and printing them out directly.
So, when talking about other languages, we're just going to look at an example of both Java and C++, where declaring variables is almost the same. Here, whenever you declare a variable, you need to first say what the data type inside the variable is going to be. So, for integer, you write int, and for string, you write string and then the name of the variable. Now you can either declare a variable empty and then add a value to it, or you can declare a variable and in the same line add a value to it.
Now, another interesting thing that I'd like to show you is that you can also change the value of a variable and you can change the data type of variable as well. Since we saw when we were comparing it to the other languages, in Python, when you're declaring a variable, you're not giving it a particular data type. So you can simply change the data type you're saving in the variable. Let's just say in the beginning, we gave a the value 20, which was an integer. Now we can give the same variable the value hello. Okay, so now when you print a, it's going to write hello because it's overwritten the value. Now this is a good thing as well as a bad thing in some cases. Now this can be good or bad in a number of ways. It's good because it's very easy to reassign values to a variable without having to worry about the different data types. It can be a little confusing, yes, because you might accidentally assign a new value to an already used variable. So that is something that you need to be careful about. Another interesting thing is that you can also, instead of doing these in separate lines, what you can also do is you can use a single line to assign multiple values. Let's just say we want x and y, and we want to assign them the values 5 and 10. So we're going to write them in parentheses. So 5, comma 10. So what this should do now is that it should assign the value of 5 to x and the value of 10 to y. So let's try this. Let's try printing print x 5, print y 10. Okay, so you can basically assign values to multiple variables within the same line. This is used a lot specifically when you're working with lists and dictionaries, which, which we will be discussing in the next video as well. The same way you can swap values as well. For example, if you now want to give the value of 10 to x and the value of 5 to y, what you can simply do is x comma y equals y comma x. So this should swap the values. Let's print x now. It should have a value of 10, and print y now, which should have a value of 5. So these are just some tricks that you can do if you want to play around with. Again, you can do the same with strings as well. So let's say you want a name, comma age, and if you notice, the first one is actually going to be a string and the second one is going to be a number. So you can do that in the same line. Press enter, and now let's print it to the screen. So print name, print age, and you see that if it has within the same statement declared two variables, given one the value of a string and given the other the value of an integer or a number, and it saved them correctly. Now, since we're working directly in an idle shell, what happens is when you close the shell, all of these values that you've saved, all of these variables that you've created will be deleted automatically. So if you're just playing around with this, just learning how variables work, it is good to work in a shell like I am doing right now, because I'm trying to teach you how variables work. When you're coding, you'd obviously want to write all of this in a file so that it's saved for use later, to run later, to edit later, to work on later. Okay? Now, if you notice, there are certain names or certain types of names that I gave to my variables, apart from simple letters like A, B, C, and X, Y. These here are so that it's easier for us to remember what value we might have put into this variable name or into this variable. That's because when we're writing long pieces of code, or when we want code to be more readable, not just for us but for others as well, if we're sharing the code with others, it's always good to use variable names that actually describe what is in the variable. And there are a number of conventions or a number of rules when you're naming variables, and we'll be going over those as well. So let me just close this window now, and we're going to go back to our slides and see a bit about how we name variables, certain rules that we need to follow, and certain examples of good and bad variable names.
So as I mentioned, there are a few rules that you need to keep in mind when you're naming a variable. A variable must always start with either a letter or an underscore character. It cannot start with a number. A variable name can only contain alphanumeric characters, that is A to Z or numbers 0 to 9, and the underscore sign. It cannot contain any other special characters or a space. Also keep in mind that variable names are case sensitive, so if you look at the examples on this slide, age written in three different case forms are going to be three different variables. Now, a good idea when you're naming variables is that you keep them short but descriptive. So, your variables should be able to tell you what you've stored inside of them. Variable names should all be lowercase. This makes them easier to read and also not confuse them with the built-in terms for Python, which we will be discussing in the next video. Also, if you need to use multiple words in your variable names, like I did for my name and channel name, you can separate them out using underscores. This makes them more readable.
So I think I'm going to stop here for today. Please take out the time and play around with these data types that we've discussed, play around with naming, the different naming conventions, um, and combining them in different print commands or combining different operations using the different variable names. And if you run into any kind of error, please either copy paste it into the comments or take a screenshot and post that in the comments, and I'll definitely get back to you in the comments as well, and we can discuss it in the coming video. If you feel you've understood all of this perfectly and you're ready to move on, we will be discussing lists and dictionaries, creating them, working on them in the next video. We'll also be running some more operations using different variable names in the next video. So please do practice this and and do subscribe if you haven't yet, so that you don't miss out the next video. If there is something specific you would like to learn, please do also share that in the comments, and I'll either let you know when we'll be doing it, or if it's appropriate at this point, I would include it in the next video as well. So thank you so much for your time. As always, I really appreciate that you're taking out time to learn a new skill, and this is definitely going to be of help to you in the future. Thank you so much, and Allah Hafiz. I'll see you in the next video, inshallah.